A big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video.
Morning everybody, fantastic to see you all again. And first of all, what I want to say about light is there is no such thing as poor light. Whatever the light, it's just choosing the right subject to shoot and how you shoot it. And hopefully in this video, I've got 7 tips. I'm going to go through them and show you how you can get the most out of any type of light. So the first one, and this is great for any time of day where you've got some sunlight, is just using light to provide focus. So I've got a print here actually. This is a good example where I've just, on the top of this hill here, I've got this erratic here, and I've used light just on this to provide focus on the actual erratic at the top here, and everything else is in shadow, and that works really well. When you have dappled light, this works really well as well. So you can see in these 2 images here, the first one, the light was on the trees, there was no light on the background, and that accentuated the trees. If there was light on everything in this scene, it just wouldn't work really. But then later on the same shoot, I took this shot where there's light on the trees, but there's a little bit of light on the mountain in the background. But then that mountain is accentuated, so your eye's drawn to it through the trees. But because the light's not on everything, then that dappled light really, really helps. There's so many different ways that you can use this as well. Here I've got just some light just hitting the mountain here, and I've got this hut that's in the shade, and because the light's hitting this bit of the mountain, it almost creates this like V that sort of points to the hut, which works really well. Again, dappled light on this scene in the Lake District where the light's on the foreground or the midground here hitting this tree, but because there's no light in the background, this tree is highlighted, it's accentuated. And it's just so easy to do that when you have all sorts of different types of light. As long as you have a little bit of cloud, then that cloud is going to provide shadow on some areas of the landscape and light on the other areas of the landscape, and it's just a question of just timing it correctly. So speaking about shadows, that's the next tip really, is to make the most of your shadows. Quite often people ignore the fact that there are shadows in photography and use those shadows in their composition. The obvious one is using a drone. So if you fly a drone up, but you can do this if you're shooting down on anything, where here I've got these 2 trees and they create this really interesting shadow. And if you get the angles right on this, then you can obviously create diagonals in your image, and those diagonals can be really, really powerful. So this one I've shot with a drone. You've just got to be careful when you do this that the shadow doesn't go over too many other things, so it's on a flat surface that's got a similar uniform texture, because then it really draws your attention to the shape of the thing that's causing the shadow, in this case the trees, but it could also be sheep like this image. In this image here, I was in Scotland recently and the sheep walked across the road, and it was actually the middle of the day this. The sun is quite low yet, it's quite northern Scotland and it's winter, but it was the middle of the day, and I used the shadows of the sheep just to create this really nice foreground leading your eye up to the sheep. I actually thought this worked best in black and white, but I'll show you the colour as well. Let me know in the comments, what do you think, black and white or colour? I blow hot and cold about it. The other thing is just, you know, waiting for light to come out. So this is a good example here. This was the needle at the Croang in the Isle of Skye, and you saw this in a few videos ago. I'll link the video here if you missed it. And you can see that I've got these amazing sort of rock formations, and this first image is okay, but then when the light came through, it just created this really nice streak of light through. Just a little bit later it came through too much and you didn't get that shadow at the bottom, and I think that adds to the actual image. Often when you have light, having that light and shade is really, really important in an image. But obviously on some days you're going to get flat light, you're going to get boring light, there's going to be no sunlight at all. So what do you do then? Well, I love those types of days, to be honest, because I think what you can do is you can just pick out shapes and form, and you know, that might be a tree, it might be a road, it might be a rock, and I'll give you an example of each one of those now. So the first one is a tree. So this image is from my new book, Close to Calm. In fact, the next 2 images are from my new book, Close to Calm. And this image here is a tree really close to my house. It's like probably 2 miles away from my house, and there was a bit of snow, and I thought, oh, that tree might look quite good. But I'd always struggled with this composition because the foreground was really messy, but the snow covered all that up. I just didn't like the grasses there. So I got this really nice composition, just made it super simple. And it's flat light, and so all you're doing is concentrating on the form. It's more minimalist. You can see that even more accentuated here in this road picture. So this was an S curve that's going through the scene here into the background. It's a bit misty, so it's quite mysterious, but it's the form that really draws your attention. And because there's no other light to distract you, then you can really concentrate on the form, the shapes in the scene. Sometimes you can use the fact there's no light when you've got a more complicated foreground or a more complicated scene. So this was a shot I took in the Isle of Skye. Again, I'll link the video here of how I took this shot. But there was this big boulder and I really liked it, but there was no good light. And I was thinking, well, actually, this could work really well in flat light, because then I'm just concentrating on the texture and the shape of this boulder. And that obviously works really well in this case. I wanted everything to mimic this boulder. So I tried to get as much as I could smooth in the scene. So very rarely do I do this, but I had a 2-minute exposure on the shot just to smooth out the water and smooth out the sky. And I think the water, the sky and the rock are all quite smooth, and they work really well against the more harsh rocks in the scene, and that contrast works so well together. I love shooting shots like this, probably some of my favorite shots to shoot. So when you've got flat light, you can also think about texture. So I enjoy shooting icebergs. I'm lucky enough to have gone to the Arctic and Antarctic quite a few times recently. I'm so lucky, aren't I? I really am lucky. My job is amazing. I understand that. It isn't lost on me. But yeah, when I'm shooting icebergs, then just having flat light's really good, because if you have any type of light on an iceberg, it just creates more complication. More close to home though, that is so true when you're shooting woodland shots. You really want flatter light when you're shooting woodland shots. I'm not saying you can't get great shots in amazing light, but when you get flat light, then you can really think about the shapes and the textures. In this shot here, I love this fern at the bottom. I think it really added to it. But although I do some woodlands in using light, like this shot here, I do feel like it's quite difficult to do that. I feel like it can quite often overcomplicate it. I think this scene is probably a little bit overcomplicated. You've got a lot of bright spots in it. Whereas this shot here, again from my new book, Close to Calm, this is just this wall. Your eyes just focused on the tree and everything around it. Some cows just went past behind me. There's a cow walkway behind me. Odd, but true. So speaking about that image and my new book, Close to Calm, this is something that's a real passion project for me. I've got a book out now called Close to Calm, which is all about local photography. So photography that's close to where I live. And I'm really excited to say that it's now available for pre-order. All pre-orders are signed, numbered, and you've got a chance of winning a one-to-one to me through a golden ticket that'll go through there, and I'm going to come out to whoever wins that. But I will be doing a limited number of books, so once they're gone, they are gone. And I'm tracking all that through Squarespace, who, guess what? Yep, they're the sponsor of this week's video. And Squarespace are just a fantastic platform when you've got something like this. As a photographer, if you're trying to make money out of your photography, being able to sell, whether you've got a book or a calendar or an ebook or anything like that, then Squarespace make it super easy. It allows me to really easily add products. I can really easily create different versions of that product. So for Close to Calm, there's a signature edition, a collector's edition, and the standard edition. And it automatically applies postage. Because my book's sent out to, I think the last one was sent out to 70 different countries, then it works out what the postage is for those countries and applies that when you're checking out, which makes my life a lot easier. So Squarespace make that all really super simple, and they're a fantastic platform just if you're a photographer and you just want to share your images. So if you're looking to make your own website with Squarespace, then you can go to squarespace.com/Nigel to get 10% off, or use offer code Nigel. There's a link below. Okay, on to the next one, that's reflected light. a lot of people forget about this, but reflected light is so important in landscape photography. And this reflected light is either something bouncing or something, or maybe just it's reflecting, you know, the sun's not risen yet and you're just getting this sort of hue in the sky, and that's reflecting those colours down into your scene. This is a great example, this amazing snow scene, again from close to calm. This was again close to obviously where I live, and the morning sunrise was just sort of reflected in the snow here, and it looks absolutely fantastic. I also use this occasionally in woodlands. So this woodland, this wasn't direct light on these trees, it was just like a glow that was appearing, and that glow was just warming up the trees. And I love it when you get conditions like this. Quite often when you get a little bit of fog, the sun just gets diffused through this fog, reflected around, and then it just looks absolutely amazing. The next thing, the sixth thing, is directions. Where you're shooting is really important. Whether you're shooting into the sun behind you, the sun off to the right, that's really important. This is a really good example when you do have light in woodland of how it can make a big impact on your shot. So this is the same scene shot from two different angles. So this tree where I've just arrived at it and shot it straight on, the sun is a little bit behind me, and then I just walked around the tree and shot back into the sun, and you can see it's almost like a completely different tree, but believe me, this is the same tree. It looks fantastic. Most of the time I'm shooting directly into the sun, or at least the sun within the 160 degrees in front of me, maybe off to the side a little bit. So I love doing that. Even on like blue sunset days where you've got a little bit of cloud, it can look amazing like this shot, or you might just have the sun off to the side, like this shot here. But I think having the sun to the side creates really nice shadows, creates really nice texture, and it just looks fantastic. But you also consider how the sun's hitting the subjects within your scene. So this shot here, I've got this tree, and I wanted to be able to shoot through the tree, and the sun is just coming from the right hand side here, and I actually flew my drone from where I usually shoot this tree and just went round it and then shot back through it, and then I got this really nice contrast between the tree and the background. So think about light and the direction that light is coming in your scene, and it can make a huge difference. I mean, sometimes you want the sun behind you just because there might be a rainbow, and that's the only time you're going to see a rainbow, when the sun's behind you. But most of the time, I think it's going to be off in front of you. And finally, just to finish this, atmospheric conditions can change things and soften things. So a lot of people don't get fog, and they want to know how they can use atmospheric conditions. Well, rain's the best thing. If it rains, then you're going to get more attenuated light, especially when rain's coming through or it's just passed through. So this is a good example here, this scene from Scotland, where I've got a rainbow, but also it's really nice atmosphere because the rain's just come down. But sometimes early in the morning as well, it might not be fog, but you might just get a little bit of moisture in the air, like this shot here. It wasn't really foggy morning this, but it just creates a more soft light. And again, this final shot here, it was really a beautiful morning, but it was quite late in the morning. It was a blue sky day, but there was a little bit of atmosphere from the cold air, and that atmosphere from the cold air just created this really nice glow, this really soft light, and I managed to get this shot here. That's it, good luck. I hope you get the most out of light in your images, and until next Sunday, because I'm going to be posting videos a lot more regularly now. Thanks for watching, and bye.